Hi, this is Dan López from Barcelona, and this is a joint work with John Horton, Gender Essentialisms, with essentialism versus kind essentialism. So, but gender essentialism has a, seems fair to say, has a considerable bad reputation among feminist philosophers, and justifiably so, as it has been often associated with problematic views. In a relatively recent book, The Metaphysics of Gender, 2011, Charlotte Witz presents a view of gender according to which it is the mega-social role that is uni-essential to social individuals. And she contends that this view is not only not hostile, this version of essentialism is not only not hostile to feminists, but actually useful for feminists in a way that we will discuss later on. That view requires, that view that gender is uni-essential to social individuals requires that each woman is in particular numerically distinct from the corresponding person. And the book contains a modal argument to that effect, that social individuals are numerically distinct from persons. And more recently, she has observed that the overall argument should be understood not in modal terms, but actually in normative terms. The purpose of this paper is double. On the one hand, with respect to the first thing, we want to claim that both arguments, both the modal argument in the book and the normative rendering of it, both fail to establish uni-essentialism proper because they fail to establish the crucial distinctness. And thus, they only support the weaker form of kind essentialism. But more positively, we want to, in the second part of the paper, we want to argue that the claim benefits actually don't require uni-essentialism proper, and would be, if well taken, would be well suited, well served by the weaker form of kind essentialism. We want to emphasize from the outset that this is an exploratory paper in that, as I was just saying, we will not be committing to specific claims about gender that are made by Witt and some others, as we will make explicit. The contention will have the form that if the claims are well taken, then they don't require uni-essentialism proper, but they would be similarly well served by the weaker form of kind essentialism. And another thing that we wanted to give credit from the start is that we will be building the responses, as we will mention explicitly later on too, we'll be building on other feminist metaphysicians' responses, particularly Asta and Mari Mikula. Good. So this presentation assumes familiarity with the notion of a feature being uni-essential to a certain individual that we have explained in a previous video. And in particular, there is that the idea that the certain feature unifies that individual in what it is as something new over and above, and thus numerically distinct from their parts and their sum. So in the particular case under consideration, a feature being uni-essential to women requires that women be numerically distinct from the corresponding person. So here's the view about gender that Witt submits in the book. So being a man and being a woman are social positions which bifurcated social norms that cluster around the engendering function. To be a woman is to be recognized as having a body that plays one role in the engendering function. Women conceive and bear. To be a man is to be recognized as having a body that plays another role in the engendering function. Men beget. Now, gender is uni-essential to social individuals, as I was just reminding, only if their very existence as new individuals is explained by their occupying such social positions. So as a consequence, women are not identical to persons. And that contrasts with the more parsimonious view, according to which a certain social position is essential to a person to belong to a certain gender. That weaker form of kind essentialist is indeed the one that we will be arguing, is the only one that the arguments actually support. So here are the arguments. Here in particular is the Modal argument that occurs in the book. Social individuals are essentially relational beings, and their existence is dependent upon the existence of social reality. In contrast, to be a person is essentially to have a first-person perspective, self-consciousness. Which refers to an individual's internal psychological condition or state. An individual person could exist independently of social reality because having a first-person perspective does not require the existence of a social world, but a social individual could not exist independently of a set of social positions and roles. So social individual persons have different persistence and identity conditions, hence social individuals and persons are ontologically distinct individuals. Now, one could worry, and Kant did worry, about the premises here, in particular, whether it is really plausible that persons are only accidentally, as opposed to essentially relational. And sympathetic as one might be with these concerns, what we want to do here is to cast further doubt about the line of the pattern of argument itself. Because, and this was, as I was saying a minute before, this kind of doubt about the pattern of argument itself was already voiced by an earlier response to the book by Asta herself. So here's another quote: being a student has different essential features from that of being a human being. Anna is a human being, a person, and a social individual. But Anna is also a student. Why not say that Anna the student will cease to be when she ceases to go to school, but that now she is happily cohabiting with Anna the human, Anna the person, and Anna the social individual? End of quote. So to elaborate, the pattern argument, familiar as it is, arguably conflates precisely ideas about the essences of individuals with ideas about the essences of the kinds to which the individuals belong. So studying may be essential for somebody to belong to the kind of student without it being uniessential to any individual student. So the relevant modal arguments fail to establish the crucial distinctness and thus only support the weaker kind essentialists without indicating uniessentialist proper. Good. So in rejoining this reply, Witt has clarified that the overall argument of the book should have been understood not in these modal terms, but rather normatively, along the following lines. And here is the relevant quote. When a social individual occupies the social role of being a student or being a fashionista, she becomes responsive to and evaluable under new sets of norms. But they are social norms and not norms of an essentially different kind, our emphasis. So the arguments that I make to differentiate human organisms, we're not focusing on this, but differentiate human organisms, social individuals, and persons is not applicable to these examples. And my Trinitarian ontology, and in particular the ontological distinctness between social individuals and persons, does not license open-ended ontological multiplications of the kind Asta and As envisions. So one of the insights we think of the book is indeed Witt's ascriptivist conception of some social normativity. So the idea that according to which some social norms, expectations, obligations, and allowances apply to particular individuals, being a matter of the social position, occupancy, and social recognition, so that those that individuals are responsive to and evaluated with respect to, irrespective of whether they are consciously or unconsciously endorse them. And so even if they don't accept them or instead flout or rebel against them. And we indeed agree that this is indeed a very plausible model for many of our social norms. But that being so, something one can agree with. And still, we think the normative rendering of the argument for distinctness fails. And the reason is essentially the very same one as before. So assume that public artifacts, perhaps as opposed to merely private tools, are indeed form social kinds constituted by certain social norms. Take out paperweight. Arguably, some social conditions are needed for the social stone to become as well a paperweight, as opposed to being something new. Clearly, the social norms constitutive of being a paperweight are of essentially a different kind than any non-social norms constitutive of being a stone, if such there be. Thus, as before, the arguments only support kind essentialism and fail to establish this distinctiveness required for uniessentialism proper. So far, so the book contends that gender is of uniessential to social individuals, and that gender is a mega social role, and that this is useful for feminism. So we have contended so far that the arguments for uniessentialism fail to support uniessentialism proper and only support a weaker form of kind essentialism. And we want to contend for the remainder of the paper is that the claimed benefits do not require uniessentialism proper. So first, consider the contention that gender is the mega social role. So that the gender is the mega social role mean the following: that gender is prior to gender as understood as the kind of social position and that she contends it is prior to and prioritizes a broad range of an individual's other social roles, both synchronically and diachronically. Prior in terms of importance, definitionally and organizationally, in a sense that you guys have here on the screen. So she contends it is a contingent fact, but the true fact about our society is that gender is not only a mega social role in that sense, but the one and only mega social role in that sense, rather than other contenders like, say, race or, say, sexual orientations. Now, that this is so that gender, as she conceives of it, is the mega social role is indeed controversial, and it has been claimed to be, it has been contended to be so by some critics. That, in particular, that reproduction really plays such a mega role, a role of the sort envisaged vis-a-vis some other roles can be doubted. And relatedly, although it claims that her view is compatible with the idea that gender norms are racially inflected in racialized societies, and that the intersectionality of multiple social roles with gender is compatible with gender being the mega social role, it might be doubted that this is ultimately so given the asserted priority of gender. In any case, what we want to contend is that if these claims about gender by Weed are well taken, then those are claims concerning the way society, the way social roles are structured in society, and the way, in particular, social roles in connection with the gendering functions are structured in society. And if those claims are well taken, then kind essentialist is in as good a position to vindicate them as uniessentialist proper. So uniessentialist is not required for vindicating them. Similarly, with respect to the issue concerning the significance of the view defended in the book in connection for feminist purposes. So those benefits, or that significance for feminism is summarized in this quote here. So gender, she claims, gender essentially directs our attention away from individual psychologies and their conscious and unconscious biases, and the form process of choice, and towards the social world, its available social roles, and the ways in which its available social roles can and cannot be blended into coherent practical identity. Moreover, according to gender essentialists, our practical identities are essentially gender. Taken together, these ideas suggest that political and social change for women will require changing existing social roles that, as they overlap, clash, and threat through a life, disadvantage and oppress women. Now, this benefit for this benefit, what seems relevant is indeed which conception we have summarized, which a scriptivist conception of the way that we agree is indeed very plausible for many gender norms. But that conception, that descriptivist conception of many gender norms is independent from uniessentialism proper, and in particular the ontological distinctness of women, social individuals and persons, and women and persons that we have been claiming that the arguments on offer fail to support. So we agree with Mari Mikkola in that claim of hers. It is certainly true, she says, that the goal of critiquing and altering oppressive social norms is crucial for feminists. However, it is unclear to me, says Mari Mikkola, and we agree, why precisely uniessentialism, which picture of the self as inevitably gendered, are needed to motivate this thought. So in conclusion, the book defends that gender is the mega social role and is uniessential to social individuals, and that this is useful for feminists. In connection with the first claim, we have argued that uniessentialism requires, we have reminded that uniessentialism requires that women are distinct from persons, but we have argued that both the modal and the normative arguments fail to establish this distinctness and only support the weaker kind of essentialism. But more positively, we have claimed that the benefits, if well taken, do not require uniessentialism proper, but actually the weaker form of kind essentialism is, if well taken, in a good position to similarly vindicate. So thank you very much indeed. And this is the list of references.